Hey, amazing parents, it's Dr. Lindsay here with a real life story today. I recently chatted with a mom who shared that it was incredibly hard for her not to respond angrily when her child hit another child, a friend, a sibling, etc. As a mom of four, I get it. Kids do a lot of surprisingly aggressive things in their youth, and as a very peaceful person, that can be quite unnerving. We went through a biting phase with one of our kids, and boy, was that a hard one for me. You care about your child growing up into a wonderful person, so it's only natural that any behavior contrary to that would upset you. The key is how to handle it. So what can you do to help you keep your cool when your child is hitting, biting, etc.? Today, I'll share 3 tips to ease you through this challenging parenting dilemma. First, one thing I love teaching parents about in my Amazing Parents Club membership is developmental psychology theories that explain how our children's brains are developing at different ages. They're not just little adults. Jean Piaget is a very famous developmental psychologist who looked at different stages of cognitive development, so how the brain and thinking is developing at different ages. Now, it's too much to cover his whole theory in this short video, but I will focus on a concept of cause and effect that he reviewed in his theory. So until age 7, children have an incomplete understanding that one thing causes another. It's not just like a light switch that goes off one day and they realize, oh, cause and effect, but rather a gradual transition. Now, perhaps one day they will kick the mobile on their crib and see it move and begin to develop this skill. And maybe the very beginning of, oh, I caused that to happen. I touched it. And then later on, maybe they'll throw their pasta on the floor and see mom pick it up. And then they throw it again, mom picks it up again. And then this idea of cause and effect is starting to sink in a little bit more. And then maybe at a play date, they hit a friend and they see them cry. But it really isn't fully developed until 7 that most kids can fully comprehend, I hit my friend, that hurt my friend, she was upset and hurt and started crying, and therefore hitting my friends hurts them and makes them start crying. So it's easy to assume that our kids think just like us, but they really don't have the same cognitive processes until much later than a lot of parents realize. So that's why I love teaching about developmental checkpoints, because it helps parents to understand that their children are really quite fundamentally different from them. That's cognitive development. There's also emotional development. There's moral reasoning. There's so many different interesting developmental theories that help us to understand what our children are capable of at different ages. Now, it helps parents to develop a lot more patience by being aware of these stages. And so they develop a lot more patience for what seems like awful behavior, like hitting and biting, because once you realize that your child has a really incomplete understanding of cause and effect, for example, that they really can't be blamed for their mistake. It's not fair to use a harsh disciplinary strategy at this age. Rather than getting mad, you want to change your perspective to one of empathy and education. So you literally need to teach your child that hitting hurts. They don't just innately understand these things. Now, it's not a one and done teaching moment, unfortunately. That would be lovely. But it's really like a very complex math concept, okay? If I were trying to understand some very complex math concept, you could teach it to me, but I might understand it a little bit after a very thorough explanation, but there's still this kind of veil of mystery around it. And I often notice when I go to teach somebody else a concept and I really have to articulate it and explain it to them, if I can't properly do that, that means I did not fully understand that concept. And that's what this idea of cause and effect is for your child in that first 7 years. You know, they might get it when you have a conversation, they might get it a little more later on, but they're not fully going to understand this concept and be able to teach it to another person until closer to age 7. So then after that point, they'll still have to work, they'll understand the concept, they'll still have to work on things like inhibiting aggressive urges. So even though they understand cause and effect, then we have other factors to play in, like development of their prefrontal cortex, so this area in the front of their brain that is responsible for more higher order brain functions, all those really complex things like inhibiting self-control, planning, problem solving, decision making, all those really complex brain functions that don't fully develop until age 25. So that gets us into a whole nother discussion about developmental checkpoints. And that ties into point number 2, which is that your child is often responding with their very emotional brain. So this is the deep layers of the brain, the deep brain structures that are responsible for emotional responses, like the amygdala, as opposed to the rational brain that was closer to the surface in the prefrontal cortex. So your child is hitting because they're upset, and they're thinking with their emotional brain. I'm upset, I'm gonna hit, that's gonna make me feel better. Their rational brain is not in control at the moment. So what happens when you respond with anger, when you react with anger to your child? You're fueling the flame, fueling that fire. So let me know in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. If you're a parent who has ever lost your cool with your child and reacted with anger, you will know what I mean. And it does not instantly solve the problem. Your child may get quiet for a moment, but it's not going to instantly resolve the situation. It can lead to much worse issues in the long run. And even instantly, it might just flame a tantrum, okay? And so what we want to do, instead of responding with anger, we're totally surprised by the biting, the hitting, it's not in line with our values, we respond with anger. What really we need to be doing in that moment is supporting them and helping them to move from that emotional thinking into rational thinking mode. Now, it's limited in youth, so they're really going to need to draw on your ability to be rational. And this process is called co-regulation. So co-regulation is the process of 2 or more people helping each other to manage their emotions. So for example, when your child was a baby and they were crying, you probably bounced them and patted their back. And the same sort of thing needs to happen with your younger child. It may not be that physical touch, it may be more of a conversation, or it may be helping them to develop coping skills. There are a variety of coping skills they can use when they're upset that are way more effective than hitting. So this is why it's so important for you to use your rational brain and stay calm despite your child's unwanted behavior. Keeping your cool in your parenting is your superpower. Now, it not only helps them to calm down faster, but it also helps you in the long run too. They're going to develop these emotion regulation skills, which will help to have less unwanted behavior in the future and promote better behavior in the future. It also avoids the unpleasant situation that results when you lose your cool. And as I mentioned, we've probably all done that, and you know that is not the way to go. Now, third, so far we've talked about changing your perspective to give you more patience. We've talked about focusing on keeping your cool to help your child settle their emotions. Now, let's focus on how to respond to your child. And here I'm going to introduce a skill that I like to call social skills training. And that's a psychology term that comes from my work with severely mentally ill people who have a deficit in social skills because of their symptomatology. They have had a hard time developing appropriate social skills. And so a lot of the work that I did with them was very much like training a young child who just doesn't innately have those skills. In every situation, they need to learn what is the appropriate way to respond. And we have to show them and guide them. And so what social skills training involves is talking through what has happened in a situation. So let's say that you have 2 kids and they have had a disagreement. So social skills training with them would involve gathering them up, helping them to calm down enough to be able to have a conversation, and asking, what happened? Tell me, walk through the situation, what happened, get some details. Don't get too caught up in the details, and definitely don't go into he said, she said. Just get an idea of what's going on. And so here you're talking through what happened and what could have been done differently. And the core ideas here are that you're working towards 3 really important higher level brain functions that they'll have down when they're older, but it takes a lot of practice to get there. So we're talking about perspective taking, empathy, and problem solving. So you're helping them to identify that other people have different perspectives and helping to see things from another person's eyes. Oh, well, Johnny doesn't like it when a ball is taken from him. It makes him start crying. And then we have empathy. empathy. Oh, well, I care about Johnny and I want him to be happy. And so I don't want to do things that'll make him cry. I don't want to take balls from him. And then problem solving. Okay, well, I want the ball, but I don't want to make Johnny upset. What should I do instead? Oh, how about I ask for a turn when he's done? And so you're working towards these really complex processes that you want your child to have down by the time they graduate high school, right? But it takes time. They don't just learn them overnight. There are these cognitive limitations, so it takes a lot of practice. But by doing this sort of social skills training with them, when they do run into situations when they're having challenges with friends or play dates or what have you, you can work towards building perspective taking, empathy, and problem solving. So it's really helping your child to learn how to do things in an effective way. So we're really focusing on this concept that practice makes progress. Now, along those lines, if you struggle with reacting to your child in an effective way, I want to share my next video in which I share a powerful strategy to make it easier to respond calmly to avoid yelling at your child. Remember, practice makes progress. Keep up the good work on your amazing parenting journey.